Hello and welcome to the MSDynamicsWorld.com Spring 2013 BI and Reporting webcast series. We are really excited to be kicking things off today. I'm Jason Gumpert, and joining us for today's event is Noah Mosley of MSX Group. Noah is a veteran financial reporting expert for Microsoft Dynamics, and he focuses on Microsoft Forecaster, Management Reporter, and FRX. And before founding MSX Group, Noah was a consultant with Microsoft and the original FRX, part of the original FRX consulting team. So as we get started today, I just wanted to add that we do invite you to add your questions and feedback during the presentation, and Noah will be making time to answer questions. And there are a couple ways for you to do this. First, you can use the Q&A block that you'll see to the right of the slides. You can also enter your feedback through the chat window. And you can also, if you want, use Twitter. We're going to be tracking comments and questions with the hashtag MSDWBI to take questions from there too. So we look forward to hearing from you. And now I would like to welcome Noah Mosley. Noah, are you there?
I'm with you, Jason. Appreciate that. Thank you. So I should have my PowerPoint slides shared with everybody. Jason, let me know if I don't. I've got a few slides to go with before we actually switch over to the application. And Jason gave us a quick introduction there. We are going to cover two applications for this hour. We're going to look at Management Reporter for Microsoft Dynamics ERP. And then we're also going to do that. We're going to do that for the first 30 minutes. At the end of that, I'll take some time for questions. And then we're going to switch over to Forecaster for Microsoft Dynamics ERP. Those two applications, Management Reporter is for financial reporting, Forecaster is for budgeting. And then we'll take questions again for Forecaster at the end of that 30-minute period. If you can't wait to the end of it, feel free, though, to type in some chat questions. Jason will help me monitor those chat questions in the Q&A box as well, or speak up on the audio. I think Jason, can they speak up during the presentation or wait till the 30-minute?
No, there's not going to be audience audio here. I think they're all muted, and a lot of people are dialed in just with audio streaming on their computers. So
okay,
it'll
good deal.
be pretty much text questions or
okay,
Twitter, I suppose. Yep. Okay.
So I've got a few slides to go through for the Management Reporter piece before we jump over to the application. A quick introduction of myself. My name is Noah Mosley. I'm with the MSX Group. We're a small consulting practice, and we focus on Management Reporter, Forecaster, and FRX. We offer training classes for these applications, consulting services, and software support. So we're here if you need us. If you are brand new to Management Reporter, and this is the perfect place for you to get an introduction to the application, Management Reporter is a financial reporting and analysis solution for the Microsoft Dynamics ERP systems. It is the replacement product for Microsoft FRX, which has been around for years and years and decades and decades. So that product, FRX, is being phased out. The new one is Management Reporter. It's a huge step forward as far as the code base and the architecture of the application. It's built on new programming code using .NET, C#, and the backside where you're storing all the data for this Management Reporter database, it all goes into a SQL database, one central location. Anybody on your network logs into Management Reporter, they're looking at the same SQL database list of reports. So it's a huge step forward for FRX. If you are FRX users, FRX had everything stored in multiple access database across your network. So going from access to SQL is a huge step forward by itself. Also, authentication, or the security inside Management Reporter, is all based on Windows authentication, so a lot tighter control of your financial data. All your users have to be a valid Windows Network ID on your network. They have to be logged into the network in order to get into Management Reporter. So it gives you a lot a greater control of security for your financial data. And Management Reporter is used for all the Dynamics family, AX, GP, NAV, and SL. As we go through the application, I'm going to look at two separate applications actually. There is the report designer, and there is the report viewer. The designer is where you actually build reports and generate reports. Same way if you're used to FRX, that was where you would have the designer, you build and run reports. So same deal there. It's a separate application all by itself. And then there is the other one, which is the report viewer. And that will have a combination of a library of every report you've ever generated from Management Reporter, and also the viewer piece that lets you look at those reports on the screen. We're going to look at both of those in just a second. I want to mention a middle piece between designer and viewer. There is the report queue. Anytime you run a report from designer, before it gets to the viewer, it goes through the report queue to be processed. So you see that pop up every time you generate a report out of the designer. And we don't look at it for this session, but just want to mention if you are migrating from FRX, there's a migration wizard that will copy reports from FRX over to Management Reporter. So those two pieces, don't have them listed, and we don't look at those in the application here, but just want to mention them so that you would be aware of those two. Okay, so I'm going to switch over to Management Reporter and give you a tour. Okay, so I should have on my screen share a report that I generated from Management Reporter Designer. Now we are looking at the viewer piece for Management Reporter. Kind of three pieces to the screen here for us. The report itself is in the center of this page. So you can see I've got Fabricam Inc., all departments, and my income statement going from the revenue section all the way down through net income. So when you're building these reports, you're going to define what every row of the report represents. You're going to define what every column of the report represents, and the headers and the footers, the fonts, the shading. You have complete control about how these reports are going to look and generate to the viewer here. The body of the report is in the center. When I built this report, I did use a reporting tree. So I'll talk about those in just a little bit, but the reporting tree is displayed on the left of my screen. I can see one for all departments. And then I've got all the departments that roll up into that summary. So each one of these departments on the left-hand side there has an income statement associated with it. I can switch back and forth just by clicking on the next department one time, and that updates the report in the middle for just that data. Same formatting. Some rows may be hidden because the rows might have zero balances, but the shading and the fonts, all those come over same type of layout between the different departments. I want to also mention on the right-hand side we have a section for comments and for charts and graphs. So not all your reports need that, but if you decide that you want to add comments and charts and graphs, it's really easy to do inside the viewer here. And I'll give you an example of that in just a minute. When you run the reports out to the viewer here, you have the report itself. Also, you'll have drill down capability. So if you don't want just the top level, you want to be able to see the account level detail and the transaction level detail, you can double click on these rows and drill down to that level of detail. So on my screen, let me go and switch to the corporate department. So on the left-hand side, I've clicked corporate department 000. That displays in the middle of the page here. I can see U.S. sales in January had a negative $59,000. If I double-click anywhere on that row, I'll double-click and I'll drill down to the account level details for that row. So I can see the exact account numbers that this money was posted to. For a lot of people, account level detail is all you really need to track down and analyze your data. Some people, however, will need to drill down a little bit further. So if you want to see the exact transactions that contribute to these balances, you can double-click anywhere on these rows and it opens up a new report with the transaction level details. So for this top row, U.S. sales, if I double-click anywhere on that row, Management Reporter opens up the new report with the transaction details for that account. So a great way to analyze your data. You can have the summary level, you can drill down to the account level detail, and you can drill down to the transaction level detail. Every time I double-clicked, Management Reporter opened up a new window on top of the last one, so they're all still there. It's easy to navigate back and forth between the different reports. If you need additional detail past the transaction level detail, you can click any of these transaction rows and drill back into Dynamics. Now you have to have Dynamics open, and if you have Dynamics open in the background, you'll have this icon at the top right for Drill to Dynamics. It'll be in color, and that'll let you open up the details in Dynamics for that transaction. So that way you can get all the way back to the different modules, whether it's payroll, AP, or whatever else that supports these transaction level details. Let me switch back to the top level of my report here. I want to mention those charts and graphs on the right-hand side of my screen there. So you can add those to any report that you generate in the viewer here. It's really easy to add these and comments as well. So if you're going to make a new chart and graph for Management Reporter, it's just a matter of right-clicking on whatever column or row you want to select. That activates the charts and graphs icons at the top right. And just select which type of chart or graph you want to generate. That goes out and makes that for you based on that column you selected or the row you selected. Easy to generate those. And if you want to keep that, you just click the thumbtack to pin it to the right-hand side of the window. So that tied that to the right-hand side of the screen, and just drill down. I see my chart and graph for February on the right here. Comments are just as easy to add for these reports here. You can select any row here just by right-clicking on any row. I've already got one tied to the cost of goods sold row. I can tell because I have a little comment icon just to the left of cost of goods sold. So I can right-click anywhere on that row and open that comment back up. They're all tied to the right here. And any viewer that has access to this report can open up those comments for reference. So reports are very flexible in building. You control what every column represents, every row represents. You've got the reporting tree you can add, so you can have one report definition used by every department you have in the company or any other dimension that you have inside Dynamics. You've got the drill down for account level detail, transaction level details, and all the way back into Dynamics itself. You've got the comments and the charts and graphs feature. Exporting options for the viewer here, those are listed at the top of my screen right above the report header. You can export any of these reports out to Excel. If you send these out to Excel, it keeps all the formatting. If you're sending every part of the tree, every department from this income statement, they'll all go out to Excel in different worksheet tabs inside Excel. You can also send these out to XPS, which is a static copy. It's like Microsoft's version of PDF documents. Send these out to the printer or email as well. A little bit about the email icon there. It doesn't send a copy of the report in the email. The email just contains a link back to the viewer. So your user still has to be on the network, and they have to have viewer access. Now, looking here at the report itself, I want to look at the library of all the reports I've generated so you can get a feel for that library section as well. So I'm going to scroll to the bottom of my screen. And I've got two tabs at the lower left, the report data, which is where I've been looking at the report itself. But there's also the report library. So let me click there. And the report library is the collection of every report you've ever generated out to the viewer. So on my top left of my screen, I've got a folder that says library. I'll click the plus icon once to expand that, and then you can see every folder that we've added into the library, and every folder has a collection of reports. You can make as many folders here to organize your reports as you need to. A lot of people are organizing these by year references and then by months. It might be by management positions or anything else you want to organize these into. once you have these organized, you can then set security, so your individual users only have access to their folders and then to their reports. In addition to all the reports that you generate out of Designer, you can also include here external files. So if I right-click on any of these folders and select Insert External File, I can bring in here supporting schedules like Excel files or Word documents to support my reports, support the details. They don't change the numbers for your reports, but you can bring those in for supporting details. So it's kind of a collection of everything you've got for financials, all the reports from Designer, as well as supporting schedules from Excel or Word or other Office documents. So I'm going to switch into the Designer next to see how this report was actually built for us. So you get a feel for that inside the Designer. And again, Designer is a separate application. I've already got it running here. A little bit about the navigation for Designer. The main navigation, just like we had buttons in the viewer for the library and the report data itself, those buttons are all on the left here, lower left. So I've got buttons for the report definitions themselves, and if I have that button selected, all the reports that I've built definitions for are displayed above that in this window right above this section. Now you also have a button for row definitions. It'll show you every row definition we built inside Management Reporter. Same thing for columns and reporting trees as well. Now when you're building reports inside Designer, you're always going to have a row definition and a column definition. Your row definition is going to control what every row in the report represents. It might be pulling account numbers from the GL database. It might be pulling data from Excel. It might be pulling subtotal rows like net income. So you control what every row represents in the reports. The column definitions will define what every column in that report represents. So when you build your column definitions, you may have some that are pulling actuals. You may have some columns that pull budget data. You might have variance calculation columns, percent columns, and when you build these, you define all those definitions in the column definition. You're always going to have a row definition and a column definition. Reporting tree definitions is optional, but they do come in very handy, and sometimes they're required. So reporting tree definitions will let you organize your dimension codes and summarize those and use those against your report definitions. So that's the way I use the reporting tree for a list of all my departments in that report we just looked at. And then I can use that one income statement definition against any part of the reporting tree. Reporting trees are required if you're going to be pulling data from multiple GL databases. So in that case, they're required. But you would use the reporting tree to pull data from different GL companies, and that way you have an easy consolidation, bring all that data from different companies into one report for consolidated reporting. So very easy to bring all that data together. Just going to show you briefly what the row and column tree look like inside Designer. So on the right side of my screen, I've got that report definition open that we looked at in the viewer. I've got an icon here that will open up the row definition for me that we're using. So let's look at that just briefly. And if you're used to FRX, these concepts are very similar. Not a big or huge difference between FRX and Managed Reporter about how you build these reports. Managed Reporter is more flexible. You have greater options there for building these reports, but you'll get the look and feel for it pretty easy. So my screen here is displaying a row definition, and I've got in column A my row codes listed down the page. These are kind of just placeholders, so you really reference those in calculations mainly. I've got my row descriptions. Count numbers are all the way on the right here. You can make those out on my screen, but this would be typically where you reference your main account numbers. But you can reference any dimension that you have inside your GL database. So if I double click that main account number cell, it opens up a dimension window for us. Just want to talk a little bit about this. In this demo database, I've got 3 segments, segment 1, 2, and 3. You'll see the same window in the row definitions and the column definitions. You can mix and match any dimensions you have in your GL database into your report definitions, and it gives you a lot greater greater control over how you're referring to these dimensions on every row, every column, or every part of the reporting tree. If you have 5 dimensions in your GL database, that window would show you all 5 of those listed. You control all the formatting and fonts for every row of your reports. So I've got headers for operating expenses. I've got a row subtotal for gross margin. You control all the calculations for these rows as well. This report was just built to pull data just from the GL database, but if you needed to pull data from Excel, you could do that here as well. And I'm going to look at the column definition next briefly for us, and leave a few minutes at the end for questions. So switching back to the column definition, you're always going to have a column definition when you build your reports. And this is where you're going to open up the definition and control what every column of the report represents. Is it a description column? Is it actual data? Is it budget data? Is it a calculation column? A variance column? And you have complete control about what every column pulls into that report. I've got here in column A, my screen's still refreshed on this side, description columns. And then I have a lot of FD columns. FD for Management Reporter refers to financial dimensions from your GL database. And then you see all of these are pulling actual data. But if you have budget data, it's just as easy to switch this from actuals to budget. You've got a top header section just for the column headers for each run, and you same way you have the fonts and shading for all of the rows in your report, same thing for all the column headers and for the whole column as well if you need to. So complete control over the column definitions. And let me show us the reporting tree that we use for this report next. Again, reporting tree definitions are optional, but they do come in very handy. They help you organize all of your dimensions. And you do have to have a reporting tree if you are going to pull data from multiple GL databases, multiple companies. Looking at the reporting tree definition, it's kind of a split screen here for this definition. Just a second while the screen catches up with me. So in the middle side here, I've got kind of a graphical display. So I've got the summary level of the reporting tree, and I've got corporate, administration, accounting, all the different departments that add up to the summary. All the details for every level in this tree are listed on the spreadsheet on the right-hand side. And this one is set up just to pull all the different departments. They're all coming from the TWO company. But if you needed to pull from multiple companies, this is where you would do it in column A. Just pick the different company, and then this part of the tree would pull data only from that company. Makes it really easy to get a consolidation from as many different GL companies as you need to. So I've got about 5 minutes left. I saw some questions pop up in the Q&A box and the chat box. I was going to take those next and see what we had there. Jason, I didn't know if you had a chance to look at those ahead of time before I did or not.
Yeah, why don't we, so there are several. I think there's one or two that you may not be able to see yet, but let's get to the ones that are visible there. So, and see how we do for time. One of the first questions that came in, can you do the level of drill down you were showing in all the Dynamics ERPs, I've heard complaints that you can't see subledger details in AX, for instance.
Well, once you get back into AX, then you can go anywhere inside AX. All right, so but the reports inside the viewer, I have the report open here, the viewer piece. This can show you the transactions that add up into the account level detail, and that when you drill from the transaction level detail report back into AX, then you can go anywhere inside AX as long as you have access to those modules.
Okay, another question that came in, how long does it take to run a report if you have lots of transactions in your GL?
Yep, very good point. So that all depends on the beefiness of your servers and the amount of data you're pulling back in. When you're running reports, you pick, you know, if you want to run it for a summary level, or if you want to run it for summary plus account level detail, or also do you want to include transaction level detail as well. So the more detail you include, the longer it will take to process. Using reporting tree slows it down as well. There also are two options when you're installing Management Reporter. There is a legacy provider and there's a data mart provider. So legacy runs slower than the new data mart provider. The data mart provider is it came out end of last year, and it's kind of a middle database that pulls the balances from your GL database and all the transactions into a middle database that makes it easier for Management Reporter to recognize and generate the reports.
All right, and here's a question that you might not have seen, Noah. Is there a way to expose more data for each of the transactions in order to appear on the report when the user is drilling down?
There is. So if I had drilled down to the account and then transaction level detail, let me open that up for us here on the screen. So this has one column of transaction details. It's very limited there. But inside your column definitions, you can add additional columns. And it might be stuff like invoice number or posting date or batch number. So those are additional columns that we would add into our column definition. And you wouldn't see the columns until you drill down to the transaction level detail.
Great. And here's a question. You may have touched on this already. Data mart for GP that came out with Rollup 3. Can you please explain data mart versus legacy? If we're currently on legacy, can we apply RU4, or do we need to move to data mart before applying RU4?
So data mart's that middle database that copies transactions and all the details from the GL database over to the data mart database, and it does it all the time, constantly. There's a constant connection, and so it refreshes like less than every minute. And then when you run the reports pull those, summarize those data from the middle database, the data mart. If you're going to go to RU4, you just install RU4 and you have to reconfigure the company so that you have the provider is going through the data mart option instead of legacy. So it's easy transition and easy installation.
All right, we've got quite a few other questions that have come in here, and let's see how many more we can get through. In FRX, we had the ability to chain reports. Can this be done in MR?
So chain reports in FRX, you could have one report in FRX, and you would chain it to a second report. And when you ran the first one, and that was finished, it would automatically run the next report that was chained to it, and you can chain as many reports to each other as you needed to. The problem with that was you never knew what your first report in the chain was, and you never knew how many were all chained together. So they've changed how it's done inside Designer now, and it's a much better approach. So let me switch over there for us. And just mention I'm in Designer, and on the left-hand side there is a button for report groups. So that's what they call it now. Instead of chaining, these are report groups. And report group is where you just say, okay, I want 5 reports in this group. And when you decide to run it, they all 5 run. And that way you have right in front of you, you know exactly which reports are included in that group. And when you run it, you pick the date and you click generate, and they all run at one time. So huge improvement over chaining. I got about, it's 11:30 now my time. Jason, if you want to switch to forecasting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's your call. Go ahead, and maybe we can revisit more of these questions after you've covered more on Forecaster.
Good deal. Thank you. So the next half of this hour, we're going to look at Forecaster for you. And at the end, I'm going to take questions about Forecaster. And if we don't have any Forecaster questions, we'll jump back to Management Reporter questions. So Forecaster for us is for budgeting. Okay, Management Reporter was only for reporting. So you could not write data back to a database. You can only pull data out of that database. But if you need to pull up a screen and do your budget and type numbers, change numbers, and have it saved back to a database, you've got to use Forecaster for that. So Forecaster is meant to handle all your budgeting, forecasting, and planning. It's a separate SQL database, so it's all by itself. It does use your financial dimensions, your account structure, as you're setting up and building this budget. So it makes it really easy to compare actuals to budget pretty much right away. Pretty much every client I've got, if they're going to go to Forecaster, they're using Excel for budgeting. And you know, usually they have tons of spreadsheets. You have tons of tabs in those spreadsheets. You email those out to everybody at your office. Say, okay, here's your copy after I've set up 50 different copies of that one Excel template. And you ask them to do their budget and wait for them to email it back to you. So that by itself is a huge challenge for doing your budget with Excel. You don't have any way of really controlling the workflow. You've got to have a list somewhere telling you, okay, how many files do I have outstanding, whose have not been received back yet. You don't have any really control over security. Once you send those Excel files out, you don't know really where they go to after that, who has access to it. Audit trail is a mess because you don't really know who got that Excel file and changed any numbers. So big problems with the time it takes to set those spreadsheets up, the time it takes to send it out, any changes to those spreadsheets, and just getting all that data back into one consolidated budget is a huge hassle using Excel. Forecaster has a lot of options to handle those for us. You still get a spreadsheet style user interface. So your users, they open up Forecaster, and it looks like a spreadsheet, so they're familiar and comfortable with that layout for us. Forecaster, it's not Excel-based. It's an application all by itself. There is security built into it, so your users log in with their user ID, and then that gives them access only to their data. There's workflow built into Forecaster, so that when that user, that budget manager, is finished with their budget, they can submit it, and it sends an email to the next person saying, hey, I'm ready for you to review my budget. So a great way to control workflow, who is the next person in the review process. As soon as your budget managers click Save on an input screen, that data is stored in the Forecaster database, and it's stored against your same account numbers that your actuals are. So if you've got actuals there, you can have that side by side with Forecaster data, and it's saved and consolidated right away, immediately. It's all in the same SQL database, so as soon as they click Save, you can see it too. When you are budgeting inside Forecaster, you've got input screens just for account level detail, but you also have detail budgeting already built into Forecaster. So you've got capital detail where you can budget for new assets you intend to purchase. And you've got revenue detail. You can budget for additional level detail for revenue. And you've got HR for budgeting for your wages, taxes, and benefits for all your existing employees and for any new hires you want to bring in next year. And also web access. All your budget managers, they'll either have a desktop installation of Forecaster they log into, or they can open up Internet Explorer, log into the Forecaster website on your network, and get to their data that way. So two easy ways to get to your budget inside Forecaster. Let me switch over to Forecaster now, and let's look at that on the screen with us. So I've just got my screen shared. I should have, it's kind of a spreadsheet type layout. Jason, let me know if you don't see that. You've got several tabs on this input screen, which is, we're looking currently at the multi-row tab for input inside Forecaster. Looks like a spreadsheet. All your budget managers will feel comfortable with that. They've got this one set up for months going across the top of the column, so January through December. Then on the right-hand side, I've got a year-to-date column for us. When you design your input templates for your budget managers, you control what every one of these columns represents. It could be monthly, it could be quarterly, annuals. You can have actuals right beside budget with a variance column. When you build this template, you control what every column represents. Also, when you build this, you can use one template and then have every department use the same one. So you build it one time, it's updated. You could have different ones, but it's easy to build one and have everybody use that same one. Going down the left-hand side here, we've got account numbers. So this is typically your main account number. And you control what every account your budget managers are going to see on this screen. They might not need revenue accounts here. Like I just start at the salary account numbers. They may not need salary accounts on their input screen. So you can restrict their access down to the account level detail. You can also restrict access to, what department should they see? What locations should they see? Do they have access to HR? Do they have access to revenue and capital? So you control all that security inside Forecaster's built-in security section. When your budget managers are doing their data input, they can type in balances directly. I've got a row for disability insurance. If I type in $100, press enter. When I save that, that goes into the database for anybody who has access to this department to see. They can also add line item details. If they don't want to add just that one balance, they might break it out into additional rows of detail. So if I look at the travel account, I've got $10,000 in February, but I've got a plus icon on the left-hand margin. So that lets me know that that $10,000 was not just typed in directly. There's line item details adding up to it. And I can double-click anywhere on that travel row, and it'll expand and show me the details that add up to the travel account. So I can see that $10,000 for February came from a 2000 trip to Chicago, 5,000 to Las Vegas, and then 3,000 mixed across other locations. And your budget managers, they can add as many rows of detail as they need to that account, as long as it's open and available for input. And they don't have to call you and say, hey, I need some more rows to add some details here. They just double-click a row, it opens up, they can add as many rows as they need to, and they just type over the description, make that whatever that description should represent. And that does not mess up your consolidation. So if you had Excel files of that and you are trying to do a consolidation when you get the Excel files back, if your budget managers added new rows, it could throw off all your calculations, your links, your copy and paste wouldn't be as easy. So with this, everything is stored back to that travel account, which on here is account 3010. So I know exactly what account number that money was posted to. It doesn't matter what row or what number of rows were added beneath it. It's all about the account numbers. So for the screen here, as soon as your users click Save, that data goes back into the Forecaster database, the same database that everybody's looking at. There's also, in addition to this main multi-row input screen, there are the detail pages for human resources, capital, and revenue. You get tabs across the top. And you, as the budget administrator, would control what users have access to these tabs. Not everybody will have access to human resources or capital or revenue. If I click on the tab for human resources, I am still looking at the same department I was looking at on the multi-row tab, and it's at the very top of my screen. I'm looking at New York manufacturing. So all these employees, every row is a different employee. These are the employees for that department. This screen, I will budget for how many months they are going to be working for us. Are they working the whole year? Are they working part of the year? You can handle bonuses for these employees. It tracks their wages, taxes, and benefits for us, as well as to pay changes throughout the year. And once you have all the details for your existing employees, you can also add additional rows for new hires and plan for them as well. Once you click Save, it processes all the wages, taxes, and benefits, and that goes back to the same SQL database that we're looking at on the first page. Capital is a very similar approach. It's a detail tab all by itself. Every row here will be a new group of assets that you plan to purchase next year. Forecaster will track the cost that you plan to spend on these assets and will calculate the depreciation expense for those assets as well. Your budget managers can add as many rows here as they need to. They add the rows, they change the description, they can change the ID numbers, they track what period you plan to purchase the asset, what period to start depreciation expense, the cost of the individual assets, and how many you plan to purchase. All that goes in the same database, same SQL database that everybody else is looking at. As soon as they click Save, it's consolidated. And the Revenue tab for us as well. This is where you can break down your revenue detail between 2 additional dimensions that you might not be currently tracking in your GL dimensions. So we're using market here and product, although this could be anything else. It might be states, it might be offices, it might be consultants, or anything else. And then when you build these screens, you decide what rows should be listed here and what calculations, any account numbers, or add temp accounts as well. So you as the administrator define this screen and all the calculations. Same as with human resource and capital. All that flows back in the same SQL database, same budget. Now, when your users are done with this, they've saved their changes, but at that point, you as the administrator are not sure that they're actually finished. They might intend to come back later and do some more changes. But if they are finished, they can go to Workflow and submit that into Workflow so that you will know they're finished. So let's say they're finished here. They'll go to this icon at the top for Workflow. And Forecaster, everybody's, hang on just a second, let me close that window. Everybody's budget will start off as in progress, but when they are done with their budget and they've saved it, they can come to this window and change it to submitted. And when they submit it, that locks it from input, and it sends an email to the next person in the review process that says, okay, this is ready for your review. And that next person in the review process, they'll review the numbers, and then they'll come back to Workflow, and then they'll change it, and their options are either to approve it or reject it. If they approve it, it keeps it locked and sends an email to the next person in the review process. If they reject it, it unlocks it and sends an email back to the first person. So a great way to control workflow inside Forecaster here, all on one screen. And you, as an administrator, you can come in here and you can open up the workflow status for, let's say, the whole company. I can see every row here is a different department that I've sent out a input screen to. I can see which ones are in progress, or if they are past that stage, they'll say either submitted, or they'll say approved, or rejected, and the last step would be completed. So you have a complete picture of everybody's status in your company all on one page. And you don't have to worry, you know, have I received that email yet? Have I missed that Excel file inside Outlook? You've got everything right here in front of you. So a great way to keep track of all that. I'm going to close out of workflow here. I want to mention allocations inside Forecaster. So if you need to allocate money inside the budget, it's very quick and easy here. Every row here is a allocation definition. And this is like where you would have booked a lump sum to corporate, and then you want to allocate that money out to different departments. So it might be you have $1 million worth of rent that's booked to corporate, and you want to allocate that out to all the offices based on square footage. So you come here, you define your allocation, and you do the allocation definition one time. You just tell Forecaster where's the money coming from and where is it going to go to, and how do I figure out how much they get. Either it's going to be a fixed percentage, or it's going to be based on the value of some other account like square footage. And then once you have the definitions, you can run these as often as you need to. And it runs very quickly, allocates that money out very quickly and very efficiently. and I only have 4 rows set up here for 4 different allocations. You can have as many listed here as you need to. Reporting inside, let me mention adjustments as well. So let's say you've done your budget, everything's in there, but you're going through the review process and you want to do some quick changes to the budget. Forecaster has an adjustment wizard that will let you quickly go through, and you can adjust balances for any department or group of departments or any account or group of accounts. I might want to adjust all of the Midwest departments for all of the training accounts, and I pick what periods I want to adjust. And then you can either adjust these balances up or down by amounts or by percentages. If I put a 10 there, every account for those months for that range of departments and accounts will be increased by 10%. You can do negative 10% as well, just by putting a minus sign out there. When you run these, it's very quick. You can adjust only a few balances, or you can do the whole company for all the accounts at one time. So a very quick way to run adjustments from the top down. I want to mention also reporting inside Forecaster. So you can build as many reports inside Forecaster as you need to. When you run these reports, you pick what level of the company you want to run the report for. I'll run it for all of the functional corporation. Forecaster goes out and combines a report back. When you build these, you control all the fonts and color and shading. Every column you define, you control how those columns are listed. This has got January budget right beside February, March, and then quarterly budget. If you need actuals and variance columns, you can add those as well. This is just a typical income statement, going from net income, net sales, all the way down through operating profits. These reports come with drill downs, so if you want to see the details behind here, just double click on any of the rows and it drills down to the details for those accounts. And you can drill all the way back into any of the detail levels as well, like HR details, and see the individual employees that add up to those details. So Forecaster is a great application, a lot of flexibility for handling your budgeting process. Again, Managed Reporter is only for financial reporting. For pulling data out of the GL database, Forecaster will let you pull data and write back to a SQL database. So, 2 separate applications. Let me jump back. I have a few closing slides before we jump into the questions to wrap this up for us. I've got on my screen additional information, so if you need to come back for more information after this presentation, you've got our website there, msxgroup.com. We have on there forums and message boards to support these products. On there, we've also got a list of our training classes we handle every month, as well as webinars once a month for all these products. We offer consulting services, so if you need any help for installation, upgrades, or building reports or budgeting processes, let us know. We do that all the time. If you need help, you've got my email address there. Email is the best way to get in touch with me. It's noah.mosley@msxgroup.com. And that lower link, I want to mention that, we've got a forum next week, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday for the 3 different products that we support. So that is on Monday, which is tax day. We're doing it all day for FRX. That's it's a free on-day training class or conference. We start out in the morning with the basic topics going through the day. We go through intermediate level and then advanced in the afternoon. Then on Tuesday, we're doing Management Reporter all day, and then Forecaster is on Wednesday the 17th. We'll email these slides out to you as well. So I work with Jason on getting those out to you, so have that information handy in a PowerPoint. Jason, you want to switch back to some questions for Forecaster before we wrap up the day?
Absolutely. So quite a few have come in here. Let me start with an interesting one. I heard a rumor that this is from Rosie, and she says, I heard a rumor the forecast will be going away like FRX, and Microsoft will be including budgeting in Management Reporter going forward. Is it true? If so, do you know the timing?
So they did have a timeline that they were going to, just like they phased out FRX, they're going to phase out Forecaster and roll it into Management Reporter. Microsoft has not released any kind of details like a deadline or anything. And also the same way they're migrating FRX over to Management Reporter, there's no doubt that they would migrate any Forecaster setups over to Management Reporter as well. So, but currently Management Forecaster is the budgeting solution of choice. They're actively selling it, actively installing it, and supporting it for years to come.
All right, let me check, see if I can get through a few more here. Can you build formulas that, for example, would use salary values and apply a factor for taxes or benefits?
Definitely. So Forecaster's HR section will have all your employees. It'll calculate their wages. You can do overtime as well. And then that will also calculate their taxes based on whatever rates that you put in there for the taxes. And if you have stuff that cuts off after so many dollars, like after they earn $7,000 for the year, it should stop. You can handle those limits as well.
Here's a question. When creating the budget, can you pull in actuals from a previous year to show on the same screen?
Sure can. So in Forecaster, on your reports or on the input screens, you can have the different columns that represent budget, and you can have it right beside actuals from last year or 2 years ago or whatever you bring into Forecaster.
All right. Can budget information be tied to project? Also, can you forecast forward based on historical?
So project, if it's not part of your account structure, one of your financial dimensions, we can still bring it into Forecaster and budget by it. So yes, we can handle projects inside Forecaster. So you can have an input screen all for individual projects. And so that's no problem. And I forgot the second part of that question, Jason.
Can you forecast forward based on historical?
Yep, so we can pull in actuals and we can annualize that to the future.
Mm-hmm.
So you can use those in calculations to come up with next year's budget or next quarter's forecast.
All right. One person asked, does this work the same way, Forecaster, with multiple databases?
So Forecaster is typically one database. So if you have 5 companies, we would typically bring those into one Forecaster company with a company code tacked onto the account mask.
All right. I know there was more interest in the human resources and capital tabs, although we're kind of in probably not a good time to go back and revisit that at the moment. But that was one question. Just wanting to see more about that. And one other question here: do you have an idea of the proportion of GP users using Forecaster?
You know, the Forecaster first came out under Microsoft back in 2001, so that I did my first installation in 2001, and it has been steady ever since. I can't imagine that they've nearly reached all the GP users, so I'm sure there's plenty that still need Forecaster, but they've got plenty out there.
All right, let me see if there's any other Forecaster questions here. Otherwise, there's quite a few more Management Reporter and FRX questions in the queue. Let me see here. So I think we actually cleared out all the Forecaster questions. Yeah, let me jump back then and start going through some of the other ones we didn't have a chance. If that's okay with you, Noah.
I'm good. Yep.
So here's one from Donna. In FRX, you could link to another row definition. How do you do that in Management Reporter?
Right. So they have not done that inside Management Reporter yet. So you could have one report inside FRX that would link from row definition back to another one. So you cannot currently do that inside Management Reporter. When you build a report definition inside Management Reporter, it can only use one row definition. So you'd have to have separate reports. They don't link it back and forth, but it'd be 2 separate reports that generate.
All right. Can you add record level security beyond the Active Directory security if you want to run the same reports but only for certain data, certain users?
Definitely. So
again,
when your users log in, Yep. So when users log into the viewer in Management Reporter, they first can only get to the folders you give them access to, so what collection of reports they can get to. And then when they go into those reports, they can only get to their level of data. So if you've got a report and it's using a reporting tree by department, and you've assigned that person only to 5 of those departments, not all of them, they only see their 5 departments. And I say departments, but that could represent any of your dimensions.
I have a question here. Can you explain, for both, touches on both areas, can you explain how to pull forecaster data into MR? My understanding is you have to use a data transfer tool.
Right. So they are 2 separate SQL databases. Management Reporter has a SQL database. Forecaster has a separate SQL database. Currently, and it's not for all the GLs, but there is a Forecaster data transfer tool that will copy your budget balances from Forecaster back into the GL, and then Management Reporter pulls those balances out of the GL for reporting. So there's no direct connection between Management Reporter and Forecaster. Now, if you used F4X in the past, F4X could pull directly from the Forecaster database using Direct Link. So that's not an option currently with Management Reporter. But the wizard, you know, it's maybe 4, 5 or 6 screens for the data transfer wizard. Runs pretty quick, and it's usually pretty easy for everybody. If you can't use the data transfer tool, then you're left with pulling the data out of Forecaster into like a spreadsheet and importing to the GL.
Here's another Management Reporter question. Once a report is built, where do multiple users go to run that report so that they always have fresh data as opposed to a report that's been run and saved?
Right. So once you have a report built inside Management Reporter, someone's got to run it for it to go out to the viewer. And then anybody that goes to that report and the viewer, they only see that static copy. They're not checking for account balance changes. Okay. So if someone's posted more changes in the GL, that report has to be run again in order to get it. So you can have users in Designer that do not have access to make changes to the reports. They can only generate reports. So it's a different level of security for the Designer piece. They log into Designer, they have a viewer access or a generator access, and then they can click generate and run the report again.
All right. Can we import AX financial statements already created in AX along with row statements? Not sure if that, does that make sense?
I don't understand that one.
Okay, let's move on. I need to send reports to managers without server access. In FRX, I exported to Excel automatically and then emailed them out. Okay, and this gets, I guess, back to what you were just talking about. How can I efficiently get reports out in Management Reporter? The Excel export is slow from the viewer. Any suggestions?
So there, once you get the report into the viewer, you do have to do the Excel export manually. There's not like a scheduler that lets you schedule the Excel export. You're going to export the entire tree at one time and all the supporting details like account level detail and transaction level details all at one time. But if you need separate files, you have to do them one at a time. So another option people are looking at is SharePoint. So if you've got SharePoint set up, all your users can log into SharePoint. When you generate a report in Management Reporter, it can put a link in SharePoint, and SharePoint can send out email alerts that says, okay, you have a new report waiting for you. So SharePoint might be a better option for you for automatic distribution.
Is that an option that you're seeing customers going to more frequently, Noah?
We're trying to just show them how to use the viewer more efficiently. So, I mean, a lot of bells and whistles in the viewer and easy to navigate. So if we can get the public at large to rely on the viewer, that's where you really control your security. You have the double-click drill down, the built-in functions for that, the charts and graphs. We're trying to really steer everybody towards the viewer.
And in terms of performance, does that come back to just your hardware and your server performance, as you were saying earlier?
Well, once you get in the viewer, you're not generating a report. It's already been generated, so that operates real quickly.
All right. I think we actually might be on our last question here. Is there a record limit that can process in a management report or report when using analytical accounting?
So it's all on SQL, so it depends on the SQL database. I don't know of any limits. I haven't heard of one yet.
All right, I'm just going to say we might have a couple more that just came in. Can MR support web port publishing?
So FRX had a web port option. So you run a report inside FRX and have it automatically go out to a web page. They did come out in the last roll-up for Managed Reporter with web access, and your users pull up Internet Explorer, they log in, it reads their Windows authentication, and then they see a list of their reports. The demos I've seen have looked really good. I haven't got on this machine here, but the demos have looked really good.
Here's a question that came in. Is there any migration tool that can convert FRX reports to Management Reporter?
Yeah, can a migration from FRX to Management Reporter?
Yes.
Yep. So there is a migration wizard. So you install Management Reporter, and when you do that, you can also install the migration wizard. It will copy pretty much everything from FRX over to Management Reporter, and anything it has problems with, it'll tag with error codes and helps you troubleshoot how to fix those. But that migration wizard is really handy for copying everything over so you don't have to start from scratch. And if you need help with that, that's what we do all the time. We're doing a lot of that this year because when you migrate, some big things don't copy over, like account sets do not migrate over. So for those you've got fix inside Managed Reporter after you do the migration. So stuff like that we've seen a lot of this year. And this is going to be a big year of everybody doing the migration.
And a related question, if we do migrate to Management Reporter, can we still use, well, I guess it's pretty much the same question. Can we use the existing FRX reports, or do we have to create new ones? But I think you already touched on that.
Yep, copy it over. And you can run FRX right beside Management Reporter. They don't touch each other, so you can run your FRX reports, run Management Reporter reports, compare them, and check the process.
All right. Well, we did it a little faster than I thought, but we have made it through all the questions, and we are at the top of the hour here.
Awesome.
Noah, I want to thank you for taking so many questions at once here and answering them all. I'm sure.
Don't worry. I mean, it's a big year for everybody migrating from FRX or starting Management Reporter. So, and we've just last year we saw the big increase of the migration start, and this year is going to be even bigger. And
yeah, if this session is any indication, there's certainly a lot of interest. So for those of you on the line still, you have Noah's contact information. I'm sure he'd be happy to work with any of you on answering more questions. We'll be posting a recording of the session. Noah, thanks again for joining us today, and thanks to everyone on the line too.
Thanks, Jason. Thanks, everyone.
All right. Thank you, and have a good day.